Hi everyone, this is Paul here for the Magdalene Centre. Today I'm doing an astrology report for the Sun's transit through Pisces, which begins on the 18th of February and finishes on the 20th of March. I'm outlining some of the key themes of this transit highlights to us, along with some of the key aspects the Sun makes during that period. Now giving an outline of what it all means. Before I do that, I just want to clarify, as I always do, that astrology doesn't control our lives. It only gives us a framework to help us understand what's going on around us, what kind of themes are unfolding collectively, and it helps us to identify what kind of areas of growth or opportunities for reflection that the astrology is presenting. It's up to each and every one of us to actually take the opportunities when they arise. Otherwise, we don't actually learn anything from it, because astrology isn't force things to happen. We have to work with it in order to make the best of it. Otherwise, we just miss that particular opportunity that the astrology highlights, but we may have another opportunity down the line. Now, in terms of the Sun's transit through Pisces, Pisces is the last sign of the zodiac. So the Sun's transit through Pisces is all about wrapping up everything from the current astrological cycle so that we can start the new cycle when the Sun enters Aries with clear ground for us to build new projects on. So Pisces is about recognising what needs to come to an end and what needs to be let go of in the current cycle in order for us to have that space in our lives for new projects to be able to grow in. Because we can't build anything new if there's old derelict structures occupying the space needed for these new projects. So Pisces is about reflecting on what we've achieved and seeing what we need to let go of in order to make space for the new projects in our lives. At the same time, it's also about getting in touch with our core dreams, getting in touch with our core aspirations, and seeing what do we want to be creating in the next cycle. Because if we don't have a clear idea of what we actually want to create, then we're going to struggle to make the most or maximise the benefit of the next cycle, maximise our growth. So this is a time for getting clear with what we want, clearing out the past, clearing out attachments, and letting go of anything which we may have had attachment to for a long time, but it's now handicapping our growth. So one of the key tools at this time, one of the key activities that will help us is meditation, reflection and contemplation. It's about taking that time out to be with ourselves, to allow the mind to quiet and to become aware of what we need to be letting go of in our lives, or what has outlived its usefulness and will only impair our growth in the next cycle if we don't let go of it. Otherwise, we have the shadow side of Pisces to contend with, which is things like escapism, whether that be through addictions like drugs, alcohol, whether it's overeating, whether you try to escape by overworking to avoid dealing with the key issues that we need to be dealing with. Or on the flip side, we may struggle with issues around procrastination because we're afraid to take the next step that we know will initiate key changes in our lives. So fear of change may also be something that we have to come to terms with and acknowledge within ourselves, because if we don't face these fears and transform them, we're going to struggle to maximise growth going forward, because anything to do with growing and developing means change at the end of the day. So if we have a fear of change, then this is something we need to come to terms with and address it. But this is also a time for surrendering the old self, if you like, to allow the old ego to be dismantled, ready, because when the Sun enters Aries, the ego is symbolically reborn. So if the ego is currently structured around one way of being and we need to be embracing a new way of being in order to achieve the goals we want to be setting going forward, then the old ego structures need to be gently dissolved. This isn't about destroying the ego, though, just to be clear on that, because you get a lot of talk going on about the ego has to be destroyed or annihilated. But that's actually not correct. We can't interact with the world without an ego, but the ego does need to be put in its right relationship to self. So it is about allowing that unconditional love and that higher power to illuminate the ego and help us see where certain areas of it need to be shrunk down and put into the right relationship. Or if we struggle with, if we cling to victimhood, it's also where the ego is based around wounds. So, and as a result, we struggle to assert ourselves. So, this is a key time for looking at some key questions we might want to ask ourselves: is where do we hold on to a victim mentality in order to avoid facing pain, or avoid taking responsibility for our lives? Where do we engage in escapism out of fear of the present moment or fear of facing ourselves? So this transit highlights some of the areas that we've tried to run away from, we've tried to bury, but nothing goes away until it's properly dealt with. So if we don't deal with it in the rest of the astrological cycle, then the Sun in Pisces will bring these issues up quite strong for us. So it's a time for being honest with ourselves, of reflecting on old issues that we haven't dealt with, and it's about surrendering them, of dissolving the old attachments, dissolving the old ways of self-identity, and allow a more empowered version to come through the higher self through some meditation and illuminating the mind. A key elements here, because with the Sun in Pisces, it's symbolically illuminating the depths of humanity, the deep unconscious that unites us all. But it's about that feeling of oneness, that surrendering to that sense of oneness. It doesn't mean that we destroy our sense of self or we lose our identity, but it's about that unconditional love and compassion that unites us all and allows us to feel that sense of heaven on earth, if you like, because we all have to create our own heavens within us. So this particular transit pretty much highlights where we've got old personal demons or old shadow issues that we've not yet dealt with, that we need to let go of and clean out in order to tap into the higher qualities hidden behind it. If we don't deal with the shadow, then we cap how much light we can embrace. So it's healing that shadow side through love and compassion for self, and through allowing that dissolving energy of Pisces to dissolve the attachments, dissolve the psychological blocks within us, and it's opening the crown chakra to allow that higher power to flow through us, to clear us out and to heal us. And as this happens, and as we become purified of the old and we shed old attachments, the energy then overflows from us, and we can give love unconditionally, because it's not our own personal energy now, it's energy that's overflowing us and onto other people. But we have to do the work ourselves in order to get to that place. It doesn't just happen automatically, and requires being honest with ourselves about where do we have attachments to things, even things which cause our own suffering, that we need to let go of. Now, in terms of key dates during this period, the first one is going to be the day after the 19th. We have a full moon in Virgo. So the moon in Virgo brings about the complementary energies, because Virgo and Pisces are opposites, but they complement one another. Pisces is spiritual health and is healing through spiritual means, whether that be meditation, spiritual practice. Virgo is about physical and mental health. It's about clearing out the mind. It's about bringing the analytical side of the mind into harmony with the spiritual mind, and it's also using that discerning energy of Virgo to recognise who do we need to be giving, who is it worth giving our time and energy to help, because that person actually wants help and wants to move beyond where they are, and who's just someone who's whining for support or just looking for sympathy but has no desire to actually grow or to advance their situation in any way. So Virgo gives us that practical discrimination necessary to convert the feelings of love and compassion into acts of service, was also having that discernment to recognise who's actually actively seeking to heal and who's just looking for attention and clings to victimhood as a means of trying to gain social currency or anything like that, because there's this whole victim mentality seems to be permeating a lot of society, but it's also wedded to this, seems to be wedded to a lack of taking personal responsibility and a lack of desire to actually heal ourselves. as using victimhood as a social weapon rather than recognising what the source of the pain is and seeking to heal it. It's using it as a means of control. So Virgo gives us that discerning ability in recognising where we need to set boundaries and make it clear that we're not prepared to engage in those sorts of dynamics. If you sincerely want help, we can offer it. If not, don't come whining about it, because this is just not going to help anyone. We need to conserve our energy so the people who do want to heal and are prepared to make changes in order to make that happen. But I'll do another video on this because there's a lot of aspects to that particular full moon which I won't go into here. But the next aspect after the full moon in Virgo that highlights into balance Virgo and Pisces is the Sun and Mars will sextile on the 28th. So Mars is in Taurus, so this sextile is about how we assert our sense of self-identity. It's taking that action, and it's that desire to get things done. So it's all about action and doing. Mars in Taurus in some respects where the ego interacts with the world. So it's the doing part of the ego. So with the Sun sextile to Mars, this aspect allows us to more readily make sure that our actions and desires reflect who we are. So it's about illuminating that side of the psyche and bringing our actions and desires into alignment with what will maximise our growth and allow us to achieve practical aims or practical objectives that are based around personal development and the greater illumination of the self through making sure that our actions are in alignment. So in other words, we operate with integrity. We're not saying or we're not doing things which go against who we actually are. The next one along will be on the 6th. We have a new moon in Pisces. So this particular new moon is falling right close to when the Sun's conjunct Neptune the following day. So this particular new moon, it's the last one of the current astrological cycle, but it gives us an opportunity to set new intentions along the lines of trusting our intuition. Is about developing unconditional love and trusting the information provided by intuition, or trusting the divine flow and aligning with it will bring the things that we need when we need it. It also gives us an opportunity to cultivate the practice of surrender. So surrender isn't about giving up, it's not the same as resignation. Surrender is about letting go of the need to try and control things and trusting that the right things that we need will be provided for us as long as we take the necessary actions in the right direction, guided by love and wisdom in order for what we need to be made manifest. It's also about letting go of that victim mentality I discussed earlier. It's about letting go of any procrastination or that vagueness, and it gives us an opportunity to set intentions around letting go of old illusions that we've clung to for a long time but don't actually serve us. As I mentioned, the next day we've got the Sun conjunct Neptune, so this aspect happens once a year, but it obviously moves slightly later each time. This is the beginning of a new cycle of light between the Sun and Neptune. It's a bit like the equivalent of a new moon, but it's about Neptune conjunct the Sun is dissolving the elements of the ego that don't serve us, and it's about allowing the ego to be more porous to that those higher level energies from source. It's about allowing the ego to be open to transformation and to make sure that our identity incorporates things like psychic sensitivity, universal love, compassion, and a willingness to embrace things which seem illogical but are actually operated via a higher level of reasoning than what we understand at the human level. 2 days later, the Sun will be sextile to Saturn, so this brings us an opportunity to incorporate greater self-discipline, patience and self-control into who we are. So it's developing these qualities as part of our core being and not just something that we utilise. It becomes part of who we are, because with that self-discipline and self-control we avoid being pulled off path by distractions, and we only make sure that we focus on doing the things which we need to be doing, whilst eliminating any distractions and having that discipline to shed anything which isn't helpful for us or will undermine our own goals. The next aspect after that is going to be the Sun will be sextile to Pluto on the 13th, so this is an opportunity to transform the self at a deep level. So the Piscean energy is dissolving old ego identifications, whilst Pluto is about bringing our awareness to the shadow side. It's about incorporating great degrees of personal truth, and with it being Capricorn, it's teaching us that the only way to be truly empowered is to take personal responsibility for ourselves and to take responsibility for the legacy that we create for ourselves. So if we don't like what's being created in our lives, then we have to take responsibility for changing it. We also have to address any shadow power issues where we still equate power with our ability to manipulate and control our environment, as opposed to internally empowered where we choose how we respond to the environment. So no matter what's going on around us, we have the ability to choose our responses to things rather than just blindly reacting and therefore giving our power away to the situations around us. And the final aspect will be the day after, so on the 14th of March, the Sun will be square to Jupiter. So this is the challenge of incorporating self-understanding without the ego becoming inflated. So with the square aspect, it gives an opportunity for us to achieve greater self-understanding, incorporate greater generosity and benevolence, but because it's an aspect with tension, there is a risk of overdoing things or trying to go overboard. So it could be that we just have that strong belief in the self, or it could be that we're trying to compensate for insecurity and we end up being obnoxious or pursuing the egoic desires, which leads to the archetype of the greedy fat man as opposed to the philosopher king, which is the higher level of Jupiter. But as I said, if we operate at the higher level, it gives us an opportunity to develop a more expansive sense of who we are and to tap into greater levels of inner potential, but it requires that we actually be honest with ourselves and we maintain humility throughout to make sure that it's awareness of ourselves that expands and not the ego's desires that get expanded. So that's a useful guide for the transit of Sun through Pisces. There's quite a lot going on, but if nothing else, the main thing to remember is this is the time to let go of the old, to make space for the new. So we're not planting the seeds yet. That'll be when the Sun's in Aries. But if we don't clear the ground, if we don't remove the weeds from our lives that will choke any new growth we try to achieve, then we're going to struggle to maximise the amount of growth we can obtain in the next astrological cycle. So this is a time for removing the weeds from the mind, removing any structures in our lives which have outlived their usefulness, and keeping them in place is just going to limit the amount of growth we can achieve. And it's about surrendering to that higher wisdom and that those states of enlightenment that Pisces rules, and overcoming any addictive tendencies or any escapism tendencies that we use to avoid taking responsibility, avoid making any key changes that deep down we know we need to make in order to become more fulfilled in life and to be more empowered. But if we don't clear out the past, clear out the closet of all the old muck in order to tap into the deeper gifts of Pisces, like wisdom, like unconditional love, and like compassion for self and others, then we're going to struggle, we'll be limiting our potential as to how far we can grow as a result. So may the Sun's transit through Pisces bring much illumination and many new insights as to how you can empower yourself going forward. Take care and be blessed.